So it's about 11:30. It's Monday the 6th of March 2017 and this is the third video of 4 on the Midheaven. So I've done the Midheaven in terms of job, work, career, one's professional status and situation. I've done the Midheaven in terms of public image, profile, status, marketing, advertising oneself. Now I want to look at the Midheaven in terms of one's relationship with authority. In the old days, authority used to stand for father, teacher, God, employer, the state, anyone that wields a system of authority over oneself. And in the past, that's always been predominantly the patriarchal male role model imagery. In this day and age, however, the Midheaven equally stands for the mother as well, and I'll do a separate video on the more maternal influence of the Midheaven straight after this one. But first of all, let's look at the Midheaven in terms of the more male role. Now, in astrology, the father, and I'm using that in a generic term, teacher, God, employer, the big male authority, the father is often symbolized by a number of different influences. Commonly, it's associated with Saturn, because Saturn is old father time, and Saturn is the skeleton with the scythe, the reaps and sows, and Saturn is Big Daddy. But Jupiter's also got a lot to do with the father, because Jupiter is the king of the gods. He's the big patriarchal masculine male. Often difficult aspects to Saturn predominantly do seem to indicate difficulties with male role model imagery, particularly aspects from the sun or the moon. Challenging aspects from the sun or the moon to Saturn show strong instances of distance between child and father, or between individual and authority. Something which is normally dealt with by the time they're 40, and then this person in turn becomes a person of responsibility and authority themselves. Put this with the Midheaven, however. Aspects to the Midheaven, squares and oppositions particularly, do tend to indicate difficulties with male role model imagery. Maybe problems with male teachers at school, regardless of your gender. Certainly issues with the father or the main male role model in one's life, whether that is father, grandfather, uncle, or older brother. Difficult aspects to the Midheaven show difficulty sometimes in conforming to one's social expected behavioural patterns. Often this is symbolic of the rebel, especially if Uranus is squaring or opposing the Midheaven. Someone who just wants to break the rules regardless of what rules they are. Whereas an aspect from Mercury or Venus or Mars in difficult aspects of the Midheaven will show someone who's more just contentious and volatile at the daily level. Whereas Jupiter, Saturn and Uranus shows more evidence of long-term patterns around clashes or differences of opinion with authority. Neptune and Pluto aspects to the Midheaven can indicate a complete absence of male role model, or an element of doubt, mystery or uncertainty around the role of the male in terms of imagery, male imagery in one's life. The Midheaven in one's role of, well, not so much God or sort of supreme being or authority, but more in terms of state, police, government. Difficult aspects to the Midheaven show someone who's more happier about forging their own path, regardless of the expected norms of society. Whereas positive aspects to the Midheaven show someone who's either comfortable about becoming a person of responsibility and authority themselves, or comfortable with working with those systems of authority because they recognise there's a need to maintain a status quo. If you look at the Midheaven not so much in terms of authority as in employer or state, but more in terms of teacher or father, then the positive aspects to the Midheaven show good relationships with male role model, while the more difficult aspects suggest that the male role model imagery during youth is a really good example for the individual in how not to be when older. I often find myself saying to people with difficult aspects to the Midheaven that their relationship with their father is a really good guide in how not to bring up your own children. The Midheaven, in terms of a male role model, it sets out the way in which one is expected to behave and conform, and the potentials for that conformity to take place or to be rebelled or rejected. This is how the Midheaven works in terms of male role model. Now I'm going to be doing one more video on the female role model imagery and talk about this as well.